Hello, I'm David Kerr, Professor of Cancer Medicine at Oxford. As I'm gearing up to have my autumnal COVID booster vaccine, there's a small controversy raging just now in the United Kingdom about access to a medicine called Evusheld. This was developed by AstraZeneca. It's a combination of two antibodies, and what the antibodies do, they're relatively long-acting antibodies. They bind to the spike protein in the outside of the SARS-CoV-2 virus. This is a virus that causes COVID-19. So the antibody binds to the spike protein and prevents it from binding to infecting, damaging cells. So it's what's called pre-exposure prophylaxis. So low vaccination is still the best approach to protecting against, and one would hope conferring a degree of herd protection to our population as a whole. There are some people who cannot mount an appropriate immune response, and we've got to take care of these folk. So because the vaccines don't work very well for them, the vaccine in of itself is not sufficient to protect them. Whereas Evusheld, in trials that have been done hitherto, can protect people who can't mount the immune response from being infected. Between 75 and 80% of patients treated with Evusheld didn't get COVID, and the duration of the effect seemed to be at least for 6 months, possibly for longer. So a really good result. This caused our Medicines Regulatory Authority in the United Kingdom to approve the drug in March of this year. But although the drug's been approved, it's not yet funded and not yet available for vulnerable patients. These are patients whom, for reasons of inborn diseases, genetic diseases, cannot mount an immune response. Patients who are pharmacologically immune depleted, patients who've had transplants or immunosuppressive drugs. Some of our cancer patients, particularly those with blood or hematological malignancies that can get a very heavy treatment that can really pound the immune system to bits. So there are, one would say in the population as a whole, relatively small numbers, but an important number of people who are still vulnerable to developing COVID despite vaccination. Why isn't the drug available? Well, we have a two-stage process in the UK. So we have the science, the regulatory authorities looking at the evidence and data and saying, yep, it stacks up. This drug, this medicine is effective and safe to some extent. Then the second phase is a health technology assessment undertaken by NICE, our National Institute for Clinical Excellence, something that I've talked about a number of times before, and the sometimes seeming arbitrary decisions that they make. So NICE hasn't evaluated the drug yet, and the British government has held out because they are arguing that we don't have enough. The trials with Evusheld were done before the Omicron variant dominated as it does now, and therefore they're looking to try to work with AstraZeneca to generate more real-world data to show that the Evusheld would prevent infection from the Omicron variant of the virus. And equally as importantly, how long does that protection work for? So is it as protective of Omicron? And what's the duration of that protection? So those bits of work are going on just now. Some real world starting to emerge that the Evusheld will offer some degree of protection against Omicron, but still question marks about duration, the size of the number, the proportion of the population that will benefit. And NICE aren't due to report on this, although the drug was approved in March of this year, until next year sometime. And that's what's caused a degree of consternation in the community of patients that we serve. Some of my clinical colleagues beating their drum saying they must have this drug now. But we're still waiting on NICE to pronounce. One obvious way to get around this from the government, and the government has bent over backwards in the UK to do as much as it can to protect our population from COVID. Fantastic vaccine rollout. an extraordinary economic package to support individuals during lockdown, to maintain the workforce, to support families and people at home. The government have they've done a fantastic job. But wanting to damp this controversy down, perhaps the sensible thing would be to ask NICE to evaluate the data that they have just now, to allow AstraZeneca to present whatever real-world evidence they've got. And although it may not be perfect, it may be sufficient, we don't know, but it may be sufficient to pass the NICE health technology assessment. So watch this space, let's see what happens. If I were government, that's what I would do. I would ask NICE to bring their appraisal forward. I would ask them to work with AstraZeneca to go over every ounce and iota of data that they have to see if this drug will be sufficiently effective, sufficiently cost effective to be used before winter comes, because I think the whole world is holding its breath, expecting another COVID winter surge. So now would be the time to act. What do you think? Here we are in the UK again, discussing yet another quasi-health rationing problem. It's not. I mean, this is about collecting more data, about being as rational as we can be, but can we accelerate that process? Perhaps. Thanks for listening. And I'm very grateful for any comments that you might choose to make, but for the time being, Medscapers ahoy. Thank you.